Okay, good afternoon. And this is our Postgraduate Research Study webinar today. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by two of my colleagues, James and also Martin, and they're available to present to you today about our postgraduate research opportunities here at Swansea University. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to James.
Thanks very much, Emma. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me. Is that good? Or is that presenter mode?
We can, presenter mode at the moment. There we go.
Okay now?
Fantastic.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm one of the co-directors of Postgraduate Research in Medicine with my colleague, Martin Clift. We've been doing it for about 4 years now. So we have come to know the ins and outs and the ups and downs of doing a PGR degree. But I just wanted to give you a sort of brief overview of what that really entails. So I was thinking sort of last night what a PGR degree meant to me and what do you think of when someone mentions a PGR degree. And I always remember in my undergrad going past this photograph 51 when I was in King's College London. And this is Rosalind Franklin. She did a PhD and she actually did a research on the molecular structure of coal and other organic materials, which maybe sounds a little bit boring, but she ended up discovering the double helix by X-ray crystallography. Also, when I was in university, Joy Division were a big band. I'm a big fan of Joy Division. And Jocelyn Bell Burnell discovered radio pulsars, as you can see on the Joy Division's album cover. Hopefully you don't take 30 years to do your PGR degree, but this is Brian May, who had to take a break out of his PhD to join a famous band you may have heard of. And just a picture of Mayim Bialik from the Big Bang Theory. So she actually did a degree in a PhD in neuroscience, sorry, and then actually became a neuroscientist as an actor as well. So just to think about things that I think about when someone mentions a postgraduate research degree. So your PGR journey, how and where do you actually start? It can be a confusing sort of array of offers. It's much more confusing than choosing an undergraduate degree. But there's lots of places you can start to look, such as findaphd.com. You may link up with academics or supervisors you're interested in the area of research you want to do, such as on LinkedIn. You could follow academics on Twitter or social media, have a look at ResearchGate. You may already have a supervisor which you're doing an undergraduate research project with, and that supervisor may be able to offer you a PhD or a master's. Have a look at the Swansea University website. You can look through staff profiles to see the type of research that's being done in Swansea University. And also on the Swansea University website, there's going to be advertised PhDs. You could talk to your lecturers on the undergraduate degree if you're on the undergraduate program. Also, your academic mentors may be able to give you some advice. And it's worth remembering that you may not actually be lectured by research active academic staff. So you may not get exposure to those academic staff. So it's always worth asking other people. Most importantly, if you can ask current PGR students, they will give you great advice on all sorts of things, and really worth consulting with those, asking friends. And it's also worth keeping an ear or ear to the ground or eye open, because there's lots of opportunities come where you least expect them. So as I said, a postgraduate research degree is much more confusing than an undergraduate degree, and this partly due to all the way the postgraduate degrees are funded. So you may want to undertake a master's by research. A master's by research, 1 year research and 1 year writing up. And these are typically self-funded. You may find some masters by research advertised, which means your fees will be paid, but they're typically self-funded, and you would be expected to pay around £4,500 for the first year. You won't pay for the second year of writing up. And it's also worth mentioning that your supervisor may request additional bench fees. So if you're doing a wet lab project, what we'd call a wet lab project, where it may be involved using certain pieces of equipment or consumables, you may be actually asked to cover these bench fees. And then we have the MPhil PhD programs, which are 2 to 3 years. So you've got two options here. You've got self-funded or funded, and typically funded by self-funded ones are typically funded by student or benefactor. And it means you will not receive a stipend. What I mean by a stipend is that if you were on a funded PhD program, you would be paid £15,000 a year over 3 years. That's normally from grant funded income, but if you were self-funded, you would not receive a stipend. You would have to pay tuition fees of 3 years at £4,500 currently. And again, similar to Masters by Research, you may be asked to provide some bench fees, but that depends on the type of project you're doing, how expensive that is, and it depends on the supervisor. Most commonly, you'll find PhDs are funded, and these really appear as if you're applying for a job. So they're typically funded from grants or companies. So you could have a grant such as the UKRI, you may see mentioned, and that's split into different areas of research. And for example, here's the Economic and Social Research Council. Or you could be funded by a charity such as Cancer Research UK, or they could be part funded by charities, companies, so on, so on. So you typically will receive a stipend of 3 years of £15,285 per year. And the grant will also pay for your tuition fees and your bench fees, typically. It's a little confusing at the moment due to Brexit and the ongoing confusion of Brexit. But at the moment, EU students are starting in 21-22 academic year will pay UK fees throughout their degree, and international students currently pay international fees, but that may change and then may become eligible for a certain number of full studentships from 2021. But you'll have to keep an eye on the news for that. So we've mentioned what sort of degrees you can do. I'm not going to talk about taught masters today. If you wanted to think about doing a taught masters, it's best to contact Dr. Lewis Francis on this email address here. Myself and Martin, really focus on looking after research master's students and PhD students, and there's other types of degrees which I'll mention in a minute. So a research master's is typically 1 year of research in the lab, and then you get up to 1 year of writing up time, where you write up your thesis, but you don't pay any fees for that year. A PhD is 3 years, and you get that extra year at the end where you won't receive any stipend, and you don't have to pay any tuition fees. So the master's really is a shorter time frame, normally 12 months in the lab or 12 months research outside the lab, and you have to hit the ground running here really, because you don't have the freedom of time which you'll get with a PhD over 3 years. So a PhD will typically start a little slower, maybe by doing a lit review for the first 3 months, and then you're building up your thesis. You'll also see mentioned MDs, which are open to medical qualified professionals. So you would need a medical degree to do an MD. These are typically 2 years plus 1 year. And you might see D-Profs as well advertised. And these are practice-based doctorates. So if you were a radiologist, for example, and you wanted to do a doctorate in your chosen field, then you could do a D-Prof. And then the master's level, talked about masters by research, but there's also master's philosophy, an MPhil, and a master's, an MRes, which is typically part taught and part research program. This can be less than 1 year, but all of the degrees you have 1 year to write up. If you were to do part-time, you basically double this first number and you add the extra year. So a part-time PhD would typically be 6 years plus 1 year writing up. So all along your PGR journey, you will be monitored to make sure you're progressing well, whether you need any help or assistance on your PGR journey. And recently we've converted to this eVision, which is an electronic monitoring system, which will monitor attendance monthly. So you and your supervisor will fill out a form every month. And then every 3 months, you will have quarterly supervision forms just to maintain your progress is going well. You also complete a confirmation of candidature in your first 3 months. And really, this is written by the student with the support of their supervisory team. And it's basically just to check the eligibility of the supervisory team, confirm the funding is in place and all the resources that are needed are required. And it gets basically lets the student get familiar with the outline of the research plan. And this will be assessed by other academics in the medical school just to check that everything's in place for the students to start. We also have a PGR conference, which is annually. This year, it will be a virtual conference, typically over 1 or 2 days. And normally when everything pre-COVID, we would have a conference dinner, give everyone an opportunity to network with each other. You'll also have a first year Viva, and that fulfills 2 sort of outcomes. The first outcome is checking progress on your PhD. So you get first year Viva to make sure everything's okay. If you have any problems, maybe with data collection or patient recruitment and things like that, a second year Viva might be suggested, where basically that's just to check everything's going okay, and they check back in after the second year, and then you go on to complete your PhD. The second outcome of first year Viva is if you were doing a master's by research, there's always the opportunity to upgrade to a PhD, and you come in at the second year of the PhD. And to check that you're on track for that, we would give a first year Viva, and if everything's satisfactory, you could then convert your master's by research into a PhD. And finally here, I've got a notice of intention to submit form, which is submitted 3 months before you want to submit your Viva. So submit your thesis, and that will include your examination panel and the examination board and everything you need for your PhD or master's examination to take place. So looking at your supervisory team for your PGR journey, sometimes you may see yourself as, obviously you are a complex human being, you have hopes, you have dreams, you have aspirations, and it's not just all about studying. You may think that your supervisors just see you as a brain on a stick and just asking how's research. You may feel like you're spinning a lot of plates, and you're being tested by your supervisors, how many plates you can spin, how much you can handle. You may even be considered a seagull manager, which my students call me, hopefully tongue in cheek, where I just swoop in, make a lot of noise, poop on everything, and then fly off. I'm hoping that's tongue in cheek. But in reality, you get a lot of support. You get a lot of support from your supervisory team. You get a lot of support from us and the PGR office, which are a fantastic admin team. And you can go to your supervisory team for support on information assistance, guidance, checking everything's competent, what direction you're going in, trying to help with solutions. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll build up a great relationship with your supervisory team, and they'll stick with you throughout your career. But it's not easy, and people say it's not supposed to be easy. Your PGR journey can be quite attritional, and you can imagine that's happened over the previous year or so with COVID. But if you organize yourself early and manage your time sort of properly, that's vitally important to get a good outcome, so you don't get the snowball effect and everything builds up. So it's a little progress each day really adds up to big results. It's different to undergraduate degree. Many postgraduates report the student life is quieter, but it's still enjoyable. It's just a different part of your sort of life. If you consider doing a PhD or a master's, it's really vital that you know what research topic you want to go into, so you can progress in that specific area of science. You may be considering a future career in science, industry, academia, or elsewhere, but it's persistence and using the support that's around you is vital. But really, a postgraduate research degree is it's considered success of going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm until you eventually strike on some good results. And if you're not intending to stay in academia, you always take away these skills beyond your immediate research. There's always opportunities to interact with other students through things like teaching. So you've got tutorials, laboratory demonstrating roles. You can provide mentoring to undergraduate project students in the lab or outside of the lab. And things like laboratory demonstrating and tutorials are usually paid well. And it's always accompanied by good formal training, so you're not left out on a limb. You're fully supported in what you do. Throughout your PGR journey, you will hopefully give some conference presentations. Again, that's changed slightly over the last year, but there's still virtual conferences to be exploited. And this gives you a development of transferable skills in public speaking and presentations. And these are key skills, whatever your career plans. And also conferences are essential for networking, building up future collaborations in your research, and even identifying people that might give you future jobs. You'll get lots of experience in publications, and there's lots of courses you can go on centrally to help you with academic writing and things like that. But you would expect to have some publications in academic journals, or maybe writing a book chapter or even other media. And it's a great way to validate your PGR research and looks great on your academic CV as well. Public engagement and communication in the background here, we've got the Swansea Science Festival. And more there's increased emphasis being placed on real world impact of your research and its wider benefits to the public. And that's not just at your level as a PGR student. As an academic level, whenever applying for grants or anything, we always need to show what the real world impact of our research will be. As I mentioned, Swansea PGR programs include structured training in order to help students with these activities. So we give you a really nice framework. It's not all at the beginning, it's dotted throughout your PGR degree, where we come in and give you support which may be relevant to the point you are at on your PGR journey. And that may be thesis writing, thesis submission in your third year and things like that. So what are my job prospects? Maybe you just want to be called a doctor, maybe you don't. It's up to you why you chose to do a PGR degree. But most people would think of a PGR degree as going on to maybe doing a PhD, if you're doing a master's, or leaving as a master's and becoming a university researcher or academic. You can become a clinical psychologist, biomedical scientist, biochemist, maybe go into higher education as teaching professionals or even medical practitioners. There's lots of non-academic jobs, PhD jobs. You may not be intended to stay in academia or research, and you can go into pharmaceuticals, go into industry. Genomics is increasing, clinical care, anything like that. So to wrap it up, PGR students really are the lifeblood of Swansea University Medical School. In the last research excellence framework, which is basically a framework that the government uses to assess our impact of research, the excellency of our research. This is based on case studies, papers submitted and things like that. So in the last ref, 15 papers had PhD students as co-authors. So that's 10% of all submitted by the entire medical school. And in addition to this, 8 of these papers had PhD students as first authors. So you are making a huge contribution to the medical school. We have typically around 150 PGR students or more. Some are doing full-time, some are doing part-time. As I mentioned, PhDs, MPhils, Masters by Research, MRes, and DProfs. At the moment, we have 4 research themes, which are split into biomarkers and gene discovery, microbes and immunities, medical devices, patients and population health informatics. But with the caveat that the Swansea University Medical School is merging with the College of Human and Health Science from August 2021 to form a faculty. So these structured themes might actually change in the near future. So I just want to mention the sort of key staff and academics. So as this is my colleague, Dr. Martin Clift, we share the role. And this is Dr. Richard Fry. He's responsible for admissions. So if you have any questions about admissions, please do get in touch with him. The Director of Research, Professor Gareth Jenkins, feel free to email him and ask him any questions. And probably most importantly is the college rep, Sean Home. And we also have subject reps, Bruce Burnett, Emma Stanton, and Anthony Owen. And we always try and get representative across the medical school of all student cohorts. So please feel free to email any of these people. And last but not least, our PGR administrative staff, they know far more than we do about PGR degrees. So if you have any inquiries at all, please get in contact with Georgie or Ian, and they're always happy to help. We've put in email addresses and phone numbers, but at the moment, I'm not sure the phone numbers are working, so please get in contact via email. So that's Swansea Bay there. We're right by the sea. We basically wish you would come and do a PGR degree with us. More than welcome, and happy to take any questions if you're still there, Emma.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. That was really informative. And we know and we understand how difficult it is for those to navigate their way to get, signing and getting on to a postgraduate research opportunity. But you've done such a good job there in explaining the difference and the route in. So thank you very much. We will come to questions, but I'm just going to end the recording. So those of you that are watching this back on record, James has shared email addresses on screen of our colleagues within our postgraduate research office. However, we also have a generic email as well, and that will come through to us and we can assign it to the appropriate person. And that generic email to use is study@swansea.ac.uk. So thank you for watching on record, and please encourage you to get in touch if you've got additional questions.